Everything changed in a matter of seconds. In the National Football League, franchise-altering decisions are usually made with this incredibly slow, methodical precision. Teams build meticulously through the draft, they manage the salary cap with surgical discipline, and they protect their future assets at absolutely all costs. That's how you build a dynasty, right? But every so often, a front office looks at their roster, surveys the landscape of the entire league, and decides to push every single chip they have to the absolute center of the table. What we're about to explain is one of the most high-stakes, all-or-nothing franchise gambles in recent NFL history. Welcome to NFL Nexus. We're looking at a team that has decided the future is right now, and they are willing to risk literally everything to prove it.
The Indianapolis Colts have just executed a defensive overhaul of sheer, terrifying magnitude. This isn't just about signing a few veterans to patch up some holes on the depth chart. This is a calculated, incredibly expensive teardown and rebuild of an entire secondary. They've constructed a defensive backfield that has the potential to absolutely suffocate the modern NFL passing game. But in doing so, they've left themselves absolutely zero margin for error. Think about it. If this fails, it's not just a bad season where you regroup and try again next year. It is a catastrophic setback that could haunt the franchise for the next half-decade. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in dead salary cap money, the wasted prime years of their offensive cornerstones, and honestly, a complete decimation of a front office that staked their entire professional reputations on this single, massive masterstroke.
And this brings us to the central tension of this whole explainer. Can a franchise literally buy a championship defense? Historically, attempting to purchase a top-tier unit in the salary cap era is a massive, massive risk. We've all seen it happen before. Heavily hyped offseason acquisitions completely implode by week 4 because, football just isn't played on a spreadsheet. Chemistry matters, scheme fit matters. Yet, defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo was brought in with a clear, undeniable mandate: find top-tier talent for the secondary, no matter the financial cost. But the ultimate consequences of Anarumo's massive spending spree are entirely unknown right now. We're looking at a front office that has tied up a massive chunk of its salary cap in a single positional group, completely warping their financial structure in the process. Section 1. The massive defensive gamble. To really understand the gravity of what the Colts have done here, we have to look at the sheer weight of the transactions. This isn't a team looking for incremental improvement. Listen to the sheer honesty from the coaching staff. You rarely, if ever, hear a defensive coordinator openly admit to the staggering expectations placed on a specific unit, but Lou Anarumo did exactly that. He said, and I quote, "We've got a lot of capital into that position. Those guys have got to play well." Let me tell you, that is a massive understatement. The immense pressure resting on the coaching staff and these newly acquired players is palpable. You can feel it. They aren't just expected to be good. They are financially mandated to be great, because a failure here means failure everywhere across the roster.
And the blockbuster trade to acquire Sauce Gardner from the New York Jets illustrates exactly why that insane pressure exists. The Colts surrender 2 first-round draft picks and a young wide receiver to bring Gardner to Indianapolis. In the modern NFL, first-round picks are the ultimate currency. They represent cheap, elite, cost-controlled talent that a franchise can build around for up to 5 years without breaking the salary cap. Giving up 2 of them is the equivalent of handing over the keys to the franchise's long-term sustainability. By parting with this kind of premium capital, the Colts have effectively mortgaged their ability to build a balanced roster through the draft. They are betting entirely that Sauce Gardner is the definitive, generational piece that makes those lost draft picks completely irrelevant.
But they didn't stop there. Oh no. Alongside the immense draft capital surrendered for Gardner, the front office attacked free agency with an unprecedented open checkbook. They handed out massive market-altering contracts to Charvarius Ward Sr. and Cam Bynum. This completely shifts the financial structure of the team, leaving very little room to pay other positional groups when their time comes up for an extension. The financial and draft capital weight of this newly assembled secondary is just staggering. They've built what should, on paper at least, be an absolute fortress, but it is a fortress that has consumed nearly every single resource the organization possessed.
Section 2. A scary cornerback tandem.
Now, all of those massive contracts and traded draft picks mean absolutely nothing until the pads actually come on. Let's shift our focus to the intense reality of training camp at the Grand Park Sports Complex, where early reports indicate this newly formed unit is already suffocating their own receivers. But beneath the surface of these blockbuster moves lies a severe, incredibly emotional human element. We really have to grasp what Charvarius Ward is bringing to this field. Ward admitted that following the 2025 season, he was probably like 85% sure he was going to retire. Why? Because he suffered 3 concussions in a single season. That is a terrifying reality. Football demands a brutal, unforgiving physical toll, and Ward was standing on the absolute brink of walking away from the sport forever just to protect his brain and his long-term health.
Yet somehow, defying the odds, Ward fought his way back. He spent the offseason finding his love for the game again, actively choosing to return to the field despite the profound and lingering risks to his well-being. And the results at Grand Park? They have been staggering. Ward has been a relentless force over the opening days of camp, displaying incredibly tight coverage that has left the offense totally frustrated. He's already forcing pass breakups and intensely physical camp battles against players like Laquan Treadwell, proving that his elite instincts and physical dominance haven't diminished one bit after seriously considering retirement.
Now combine Ward's resurgence with Sauce Gardner. Gardner is already in lockstep with the Colts receivers, hardly allowing a single catch in his direction, completely shutting down Josh Downs on Wednesday, and showing off that incredible length he's known for. Ward perfectly summed up their terrifying potential when he said, "If we're healthy, we're definitely going to be like a crazy, crazy tandem." But we have to lean heavily into that word right there, if. Because Gardner and Ward played only one single game together last year, as both of them dealt with severe injuries. That injury history is the foundational crack in this entire defensive master plan. It's the one thing that could bring the whole house down.
Section 3. The slot's missing piece.
An elite defense requires way more than just outside corners. The Colts had a massive void to fill in the middle of the field, stepping into the massive shoes left behind by the departure of Kenny Moore II. To fill that gap, the inside will be manned by Justin Wally. Wally, a former third-round pick, looked like an absolute diamond in the rough last summer. Earning a starting spot as a third-round rookie is incredibly difficult to do in this league, but he was a training camp demon, impressing the entire coaching staff day in and day out. But then, tragedy struck. During a joint practice with the Baltimore Ravens, Wally suffered a devastating ACL tear. His rookie season was completely stolen from him in the blink of an eye. Now, after a grueling, isolating rehab process, he's back. And, miraculously, he's picked up exactly where he left off, showing no lingering effects and blanketing receivers with his elite movement skills.
This brilliantly illustrates the ultimate dichotomy of the Colts defense. On one hand, you have historic, absolute game-wrecking potential. When we talk about a no-fly zone, we're talking about historical greatness, like the legendary 2015 Denver Broncos secondary that essentially single-handedly dragged a team to a Super Bowl victory. That is the ceiling for a trio capable of playing relentless, sticky man coverage that allows Lou Anarumo to dial up immense, exotic pressure packages. But then there is the dark, inescapable reality of this situation. Sauce Gardner, Charvarius Ward, and Justin Wally all missed most of the 2025 season with severe injuries. The Colts are building a massive, towering castle on a foundation that has proven to be incredibly fragile.
Section 4. Searching for offensive firepower.
So the defense is an all-in, high-risk gamble. We get that. But a historically expensive defense will mean absolutely nothing if the offense stalls out and can't put points on the board. While the front office poured endless resources into the secondary, the offensive playmakers have been left with glaring, fatal question marks. At the top of the wide receiver room, the Colts have Alec Pierce and Josh Downs, both of whom have established themselves as highly reliable options. But beyond those two, there is a massive, terrifying void at the WR3 through WR6 positions. Let's be real here. In today's modern NFL, you simply cannot survive with only two reliable targets. Defensive coordinators are way too smart. Without a legitimate threat elsewhere on the field, defenses will simply bracket Pierce over the top and double-team Downs underneath. The math will completely work against the Colts on every single passing down. They need another weapon.
Because of this fatal flaw in their roster construction, the Colts find themselves in a desperate search for a missing playmaker. At the Indiana Farm Bureau Football Center, the intense training camp environment is being heavily scrutinized right now. It's a stunning contrast, really. You have a front office that just spent astronomical draft capital and millions upon millions of dollars on defense, and now they're forced to scour the free agent scrap heap, looking for any veteran who might still have a spark left in them just to make the offense functional.
Which brings us to one of the most shocking career timelines in recent NFL memory, the tragic fall of Chase Claypool. The Colts recently brought Claypool in for a workout, and his story is a tense tale of a former star fighting for his NFL life. Drafted in the second round by the Steelers back in 2020, Claypool arrived with massive expectations, and he delivered, dominating his first 2 years with over 1,800 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. He was an absolute physical mismatch for defensive backs. But then, it just all fell apart. Traded to the Bears in his third season, he managed only 451 yards. The next year, traded to the Dolphins, he practically vanished entirely, recording a mere 77 yards in 12 games. Going from 1,800 yards to being completely out of the league for 2 full seasons is a staggering drop-off that remains a massive mystery to many people around the sport.
Take a look at this number, 28. Chase Claypool is turning 28 this year. This isn't a young 22-year-old prospect with unlimited time to figure it out and develop. This Colts workout is incredibly significant because it could represent his absolute last chance, the midnight hour of his career, to prove to the NFL that his elite physical mismatch traits still exist. At 28 years old, the window for a receiver who has been out of the league for 2 full seasons is violently slamming shut. It's now or never. So can a former star find redemption here? Can Claypool's early career dominance in Pittsburgh somehow be resurrected in Indianapolis? For the Colts, finding a diamond in the rough here isn't just a nice, feel-good storyline for training camp. It's a desperate necessity to save their lopsided roster construction. They're carefully evaluating his conditioning, praying that the traits that made him a literal force of nature still translate to the field after spending so much time away from the game.
Section 5. The ultimate question.
When you weave these two distinct narratives together, the massive, future mortgaging defensive gambles and the desperate scraping the bottom of the barrel offensive searches, you are left with one final unavoidable reality about how this franchise is currently operating. The Indianapolis Colts possess a terrifying ceiling and an absolutely catastrophic floor. We're looking at a roster built on extreme volatility. This entire grand experiment hinges entirely on the fragile thread of player health. Let's summarize the butterfly effect here, okay? If Sauce Gardner, Charvarius Ward, and Justin Wally can simply stay on the field, they are going to ruin opposing quarterbacks. But if the injuries return, this franchise has no draft capital to replace them, no salary cap space to sign reinforcements, and an offense completely devoid of the weapons needed to win shootouts. If the defense breaks, the whole thing comes crashing down in spectacular fashion.
So are we witnessing the birth of the next legendary NFL secondary? A defensive unit that will be talked about for decades to come, defining a completely new era of football in Indianapolis? Or are we simply looking at the most fragile, most incredibly expensive house of cards the league has ever seen? When you risk it all, the fall is just as steep as the climb.
But one thing is for certain, this isn't over yet. The season is just beginning, and the consequences of these massive roster moves will echo throughout the entire league for years to come. Thank you for joining us on this explainer. If you want to keep following this incredibly intense storyline, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. Like this explainer, drop a comment below on whether you think the Colts gamble will pay off, and please consider supporting our deep dives by becoming a channel member for NFL Nexus. We'll be right here to break down every single shocking twist to come.